is to see how many replies do you get of people saying, oh, I get calls like this all the time, or oh, I get emails like this all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be sharing the insights, everything that I learned after studying over 1,000 digital marketing agencies and what you can learn from it, as well as the 5 pillars or 5 things that you need to be able to scale to 100K per month in 2024 in SMMA. Now, number 1 is the model. I'm going to be breaking down Jim Launch, his business model, and sharing exactly how is it that you can set up your business the same way that Hormozi did that let him scale to $5 million a month. Number 2, I'm going to be breaking down the 5 axes of competition and how to find underserved market segments that are still untapped that you can tap into, or niches to scale to 100K per month in 2024. And then number 3, I'm going to be breaking down the exact types of offers that stand out today versus the saturated offers and what offers to stay away from. And then number 4, I'm going to be walking you through how to identify the right marketing channel to reach out to your customers, whether it's cold email, SMS, LinkedIn, Facebook ads, etc. And then number 5, I'm going to be breaking down, last but not least, the sales process that you need to be able to scale to 100K per month, as well as all the individual levers inside of the sales process that you can take away from this video to start reviewing, looking at your sales process to see where are the gaps and where is it that we can improve. So with that all being said, let's dive into the video.
Hey everybody, so step 1 of SMMA in 2024 is the business model. You need to actually build out a system that solves the entire gap. Because a lot of the problem, and I see this all the time in agencies, they'll do websites, they will do SEO, they'll do Google ads, they'll do Facebook ads, but oftentimes what happens is that there's another set of problems or constraints. Now, I've talked about this before on the channel, but the last situation, after having worked with over 1,200 clients in my career, what often happens in the agency space is that people are pointing the finger at one another. It's like, oh no, your leads suck. Actually, no, your sales process sucks. But what happens is that you are then put in a position where you don't even know what the client blames you for the poor leads, and then you're blaming them for the sales process. But at the end of the day, the client's paying you, and then that client churns, and then what happens? So how Hormozi set up his business model is that he didn't just do paid ads for these gyms. He consulted them on their entire business. He built out the offer. He solved the lead gen for them. He also solved the lead nurture for them. And he also gave them the sales process. Now, he even wrote a book called Jim Launch Secrets, where he talks about each of these pillars in great detail and what levers that his clients need to pull in order for them to solve the whole gap, to have a money printing machine that comes in from paid ads, which is ultimately their dream outcome. They want to build a business that's making 30, 40K per month. Oftentimes, they weren't even making enough money in the first place to pay for his service. So he had structured an offer in a way that was easy for them to get started, where they would just need to pay $1,000 to get started, and then he would immediately give them a result within that first week. They would have results, and then their clients could pay for the rest of the program, which was $16,000. But the beautiful thing with him is because he was collecting $16K on the front end and he had results that immediately paid for itself, that allowed him to charge high ticket, which gave him exceptional results, and it could afford higher end marketing to bring in higher intent leads that let him scale past $1 million a month. He created an upward spiral flywheel. Here's another example of that. High price, generated quality committed clients, which gave him as a business more resources to reinvest, which led to winning results for his clients, and that led him to be able to charge a higher price. Now, the average agency, they just offer one service as everybody else. They do SEO, they do Google ads, they do design. But the problem is that they're actually they're committing a cardinal sin of branding by positioning their service as the same way that everybody else is positioning their service. So what happens? The market views them as a commodity, which forces them to lower their price. That creates a problem for the agency because then they don't know how much they should charge. They feel the downward pressure against the rest of the market. And that leads to them doing everything themselves, which produces average or bad results and a plus 5% churn, which is a low retention rate, and cannot afford to acquire better clients, which leads them to offering the same service as everyone else. So coming back to this, you want to be able to identify and have solutions for your clients with the other gaps that they will inevitably face inside of their process. And by packaging this up in a way that lets you sell the infrastructure of what it is that they need, that lets you solve the entire gap for them to prevent that Spider-Man meme from happening in the first place, of them blaming you for the leads and then you putting it back at them and blaming them for the sales process. So by solving the entire gap, that lets you also charge a higher price for your service. Now, moving on to step 2 is competition unfortunately affects every industry. Now, the more competition there is, the less pie there is to go around. So going back to my previous analogy, if everybody's doing Facebook ads, everybody's doing Google ads, everybody's doing XYZ thing, then that is going to impact everybody else's total market share because we're competing for the same pool of clients. So what happens? It means that there's just less pie to go around, as I mentioned. Because for example, if the total addressable market is $1 billion and all that $1 billion is accounted for, then everybody else is just going to be fighting over first scraps. So in SMMA in 2024, it's critical to find an underserved market. Now, I'm going to be breaking down the exact 5 types of competitive axes that you can focus on to identify underserved niches or underserved segments. So the first piece, everybody in the agency space is offering a done-for-you service. Now there's also done with you, which represents consulting, or do it yourself, which represents a course or educational content. Like this YouTube video is an example of do it yourself service. And as a result, the price of that is reflective of the level of service versus done for you is obviously reflected in the price. Now, the second axis of competition is the marketing channel. So for example, a cold email, cold DMs, cold calling even, meta ads. Based on how many businesses are offering supply in each channel dictates the level of competition. So how much of the eyeballs are accounted for. In meta ads, how this is impacted is in the CPMs. So for example, if we look at a underserved market segment, we can see much lower CPMs, $40, $50, $25, $29, etc. Now, if we look at something that's more competitive, I need to call Amex, but if we look at something that's more competitive, you can see the CPMs are much higher, $56, $59, etc. versus here, the average CPMs is $40 for something that's less competitive and more underserved. So the CPMs show us in a very real way how competitive a given segment is on Meta as a channel. Now, for example, another good way to dictate that, another good way to understand that is if you're looking at something like cold email, is to see how many replies do you get of people saying, oh, I get calls like this all the time, or oh, I get emails like this all the time. That type of feedback is very valuable because it tells you just how saturated that channel is, because it means that they're getting a lot of other outreach for the channel. Now, the third axis of competition is market segment, which is, for example, how big are the business? And B2B is what's the size of business? Are we looking at enterprise? Are we looking at mid-market? Are we looking at SMB? Now, every time that there's a gap in any given market, usually people rush to fill that gap as soon as the consensus in the market realizes that there's a gap. For example, imagine there's a deal at your local corner store for 50-cent freezies. Now, everybody wants 50-cent freezies. So then as a result, one person finds out about that deal, and then they tell another person, they tell another person, they tell another person, until eventually everybody knows that there's 50-cent freezies, and then that store just constantly keeps selling out. It's the same principle of supply and demand, where if everybody looks at the SMB or small business market space for the agencies, or SMMA, says, oh my God, this is a huge opportunity, which is exactly what's happened over the last few years. Everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's been talking about how to make money online. So there's been this massive rush to try to capture that market share, to sell services to that market share, leading to the crowded marketplace that we are in as far as the USA is concerned. Now, there's also geography, which is the fourth axis of competition, which is, I do have a little bit more to say about that, where Carmike Cinemas operates in theaters in towns of less than 200,000 people. That's their entire strategy. Our entire go-to-market is just, let's focus on serving the market of cinema goers of towns of less than 200,000 people. So what happened? Because no other big movie chains were prioritizing that market, they found a completely untapped market that they were able to tap into and corner. Now, other markets would be, for example, UK or even LATAM. Now, the funny thing is about LATAM is I actually experimented with running ad campaigns there, where the CPM was 16 cents versus $6 for the same awareness campaign that I was running in the United States. Now, the average American's purchasing power is $5,800. The average Colombian's purchasing power is $1,400. This is a 41x difference. But the cost of advertising is 37.5x lower. Now, I'm going to come back to this because even though the cost of advertising relative is slightly more expensive than it is in Colombia versus the United States, most goods and services are usually about a fifth of what they cost in America, which means that there is a 37.5 difference in the cost of advertising versus a fifth of the price. So that means that the cost of advertising is far lower than the average goods and services are relative to the cost of advertising. For example, a friend of mine has a deodorant company called Plume. All natural deodorant doesn't have aluminum in it. It's manufactured here locally in Colombia. Now, their cost of acquisition on paid ad campaigns was $1 for a $15 to $20 product. Let that sink in. $1 cost of acquisition on a high-end natural product that's $15 to $20, which is quite expensive for deodorant here in Colombia, which means that there's a massive arbitrage opportunity in the cost of advertising by targeting less developed markets. So the CPMs show us in a really real way, a really tangible, verifiable way on Meta what the cost of advertising is. Now, the US is the most competitive market in the world. And so usually it's at the frontier of innovation. It usually is the most efficient performing market. And then all market trends are exported from the US. Now they might be, or they might not be, but they can be for the most part. And if you take any business model in the US and you export that to another geography, it will work. Versus it might be too competitive in the US as a geography to pull it off. Versus, this happened, one of my clients is an e-com agency, they're doing about $120K per month. And they were sharing with me a book a call funnel in Australia that was booking calls at $40 for the same industry. And that would work in Australia, but in the United States, the level of sophistication is so high that that's just not going to work. A straight book a call funnel for an e-commerce agency, it's just not going to happen for that same reason, because the level of sophistication in the US is that much more advanced than it is the rest of the world. So if we look at the last piece, which is the industry. Now, we had recently tapped into an escape rooms or family entertainment concepts for one of our clients, and we were able to help them scale from 10K per month to 50K per month. So go ahead, and I don't even like that I'm showing this. Maybe I'll regret sharing this, because it's like, this is the most lethal thing that I've ever taught, is the 5 axes of competition, of how to identify underserved market segments. So lastly is industry, is finding industries that are underserved. For example, staffing for nurses. I've heard of 2 companies in the last year and a half that have gone from 0 to $70 million or more in revenue because they were able to tap into an underserved need in an underserved market. So marketing for escape rooms. This proved to be an underserved niche and underserved market that we were able to tap into inside of the United States as well as the UK. Now, like I said, if you haven't seen the video of the case study where I break that down, go check it out. Now, number 3 is creating the offer. There are several types of untapped offers in 2024, which is AI infrastructure and selling AI-enabled services, given the trend and being able to help businesses be able to do this efficiently. Now, a lot of this is a lot more marketing than substance. Like AI still, as far as I've been able to see, hasn't been able to outperform humans unless it's human-powered plus AI, where You take the top performing human in a given thing, or top 5% human in a given topic, and then you're able to translate that into AI. Then I've seen it work. And there's a few studies. Neil Patel came out, one that showed that AI powered by humans, that content from humans then iterated on from AI outperforms human only content by a factor of about 30%. Now, agencies with multiple services, if there's a unique mechanism or angle at which they supply their service, having a offer that is commoditized on top of that and offering to do it for free in addition to the unique angle or mechanism performs quite well. And then there's build and released offers, which is plugging in the systems as well as the staff to manage these systems, as opposed to a traditional agency model, which is just offering a charge for the services. Now, the types of saturated offers: number of appointments guaranteed, number of X units sold, or you don't pay. The entire market is seeing, especially in the SMB is seeing offers like this, and thus you are facing increased competition as a result of them. And it really builds on what I mentioned earlier about the channel, is that offers are very much a subcategory of the channel, where sure, you can have a unique offer that stands out against the rest of the noise, but if there's a lot of similar competing offers on that same channel, then you're just not going to capture as much segment as you would by trying to find a channel that's untapped for a given product or service. Now, identifying the channel. This is probably in 2024, Meta is still the best channel for marketing, bar none, for any types of software, service, or product. It's still the biggest bang for the buck. But there's an agency or consulting group that my friend of mine owns, which he taps into a lot of LinkedIn long form content. LinkedIn is quite an underserved market, particularly on organic for most B2B segments, which long form viral LinkedIn content leads to high traffic, from then high converting webinars, which lets them acquire clients, which lets them reinvest into more long form LinkedIn content. Now, regardless of whatever industry you go through, you are going to need to go through some type of research process, looking at the segment, looking at the competitors in the segment, and going through the 5 axes of competition to accurately identify where the underserved niche is. And then paid media, you are going to have some type of full funnel approach or way to bring a customer from like a total stranger into a paying client. It's kind of like dating, where you meet somebody on Tinder, or you meet somebody online, or you meet somebody on the street. There's no familiarity there. And step by step, by going through this process, you are going to need to have some type of mechanism in place, whether it's organic, way to capture the eyeballs and then funnel those eyeballs downstream down through the funnel. So you're also going to need to establish benchmarks for whatever your funnel looks like. So for example, with paid media, it would be cost per lead, the hook rate on the video creatives, your click-through rate on the lead, like just lead form CTR, your cost per book call. Then you're also going to need to create native style content or ads that don't feel like ads. This changes quite drastically from organic content versus paid content. And generally speaking, most paid content is just really good organic content, because native ads, if you haven't seen my video on types of ads, or this type of ad that converts 8.8x more effectively, go watch that video, because this is where I break down this concept. Now, you also need to decide on the strategy. Are you doing more of a value funnel where you're giving them value on the front end, or are you running more direct response? Then you got to script out the copy, build out the landing pages, identify the brand kit, optimize UX, UI. Each one of these pieces that you choose to go through from point A to point Z of the customer journey, you need to identify those to identify what levers do you need to pull inside of them. For example, this viral content to webinar strategy, you need to establish benchmarks, impressions, webinar registrants, webinar conversions, viral content strategy, create copy, content calendar, the webinar strategy, creating the deck, continue to refine and iterate, and then what are your lead capture points and how is it that you're actually funneling traffic to your webinar organically off of LinkedIn. And then this brings me to point number 5, which is the sales process. The same way that you've gone through every single touch point from A to Z on the marketing, getting that person to a sales call, you need to identify those individual levers. Here are the top of funnel metrics. Now, if you want access to this, go ahead and join our 5 clients and 5-day challenge on Meta and our Facebook group, where I will give you a copy of this if you sign up for the challenge, this report and this sheet. So first step is identifying your top of funnel metrics, as I've gone over, and identifying what are each of those touch points, and then levers for you to pull. And then the appointment setting metrics, which is number of outbound calls, quality of conversations, pickups, number of set booked appointments, pickups to outbound dials, quality conversations / pickups, calls booked / pickups, calls booked / quality conversations, qualified calls / calls booked. Like, these are the individual rates of these, and then your actual sales metrics themselves. Now, the most important thing though, when it comes down to the sales process, are threefold. Is what is your pre-faming assets? You need to have assets that the client consumes before they even get on a sales call, so there's more trust built up. Because if you're just shooting them out of a cannon onto a sales call, they're just not going to trust, and they're going to get on the phone. And that's why you've probably gone on the sales calls and the person's like, who is this? What are you? What do you want? Fuck off. Don't talk to me. Bye. So the way that you get around that is by sharing assets that prove who you say you are. And these can be in the form of process selling via sales, belief shifting via sales as a framework. Now, if you want access to these and you want access to our SOPs of how it is that we do this, again, sign up to the 5 clients and 5-day challenge. I'll give this all to you for free. Now, discovery call levers is deep pain probing, commitment questions, future pacing, and there's some other surface level things like mirroring that we can go into greater depth on. But at the end of the day, these are the main 3 things that really matter on the discovery call. And then closing call levers is bringing the pain back up to the surface, going through your sales arguments, value stack, and then handling objections. Now, each of these are the same process from Brock Schiller, a closer and sales consultant who worked at King Kong, who had more than $12 million in cash collected and a 70% close rate. Implementing this for our clients has resulted in a 50% close rate. And just to give you an example of what that looks like, you can see it here. So all in all, you need a model which creates a flywheel that continuously reinforces itself over time. You need to find underserved markets using the 5 axes of competition. You need to create an offer that's competitive in the market today. And then number 4 is identifying the channel which your client's eyeballs are on, which is also under the 5 axes of competition. And then lastly, refining a sales process by understanding and looking at all of the metrics in a top-down view to be able to say, hey, this is what's working, this isn't what's working, so you can diagnose exactly where it is and which lever you need to focus on and prioritize to improve. So that all being said, I'll see y'all in the next one. And if you want to join our 5-day challenge, go ahead, click the link in the description below, join our main Facebook group, and go through the steps on that group to join the 5 clients and 5-day challenge. Plus, if you want to see exactly how this went into effect, check out the case study I did, 5K spend to 144K of revenue, and I'll see you there.